4 times as much in road maintenance due to wood chip traffic. This traffic has already caused fatal accidents, and small businessmen in the tourist trade have complained of lost income. Concerned with this economic nonsense and the wholesale rape of publicly owned forest, 130 members of the public, some from as far away as Coffs Harbour, met with experts in soil conservation, forestry, fishing and wildlife at the scene of the crime. This was made to record some of their evidence and to make it available to you. We hope it helps you make a decision on this issue.
Well, how do the blokes that you work with? You don't actually work for the forest, so
no.
You work in for the forestry, though you work in a forest. How do those blokes feel about
all
the type of forestry operations that are going on?
Well, I think people like to believe if they're making money out of it, they'll talk themselves into believing it right or wrong. That seems to be the way. Because some fellas say, oh yes, it's wrong, but you know, well, we're making plenty of money, so that seems to be the main thing.
Yeah.
But the county council boys, they all feel strongly against it. They're all...
Well, we couldn't get cranes through down at Bull Creek. Our cranes to build a line, couldn't get them through down there because it was knocked around so bad.
Yeah?
And the job was held up 3 or 4 times. We had the power off and people were without supply, and then the rain and the bush was knocked around badly and we bogged and the job was put off and put on again.
Yeah.
Have you been down to Bull Creek?
No, not that I'm aware of.
It's on the Green Cape, it's on the Edram. It's on the Edram Road.
Oh yes, I know the area, but we haven't been along the Edram Road itself.
Well, you can drive along the power line there, and the pulpwood tracks go right through there, and by gee, it's a mess. Stinks of dieseline, the water's rotten.
Yeah.
We used to go in camping to the Tangaby,
Yeah.
and there was this you'd come along the road and this little wooden creek, little wooden bridge rather, and you could get some fresh water there for washing and so forth. Well, I was in there last June. I hadn't been in there for years, and I didn't recognise it. It's beyond recognition.
Yeah, they've cut it so bad.
They've cut it so bad, it's beyond recognition. There's no little wooden bridge, there's no water hole, it was just a mess. It was just...
There's a gravel pit there.
Yeah,
Gravel pit.
There's a gravel pit, that's about it.
Right.
Going to be difficult to get this operation stopped because many people depend on it. But it's already the wood chip industry in Tasmania is suffering from a downturn in the Japanese economy, where you've got one wood chip industry not exporting any longer. That's the Northern Wood Chip. They closed down earlier this year, and that threw 28 long hauliers out of work, and they had a combined debt of $1.75 million, according to the local paper. And one of the contractors estimated that throughout Tasmania would be a debt on the logging contractors alone of something like $10 million. That's in hire purchase. They've got to buy these very big flash trucks, you know, Kenworths and the like, which cost a fortune. And if you go into the bush, you'll find a contractor will have not only be in league with a haulier, but the contractor will have very expensive equipment. You know, machines costing $50,000. And so you Sniggers and D6s and things that they use in the bush. And these big Volvo pincer things pick up the logs. So, you know, it's economically shaky, this industry at the moment, because it has been set up so quickly. Not only is it environmentally irresponsible, but it's economically irresponsible because it can't necessarily guarantee the continued and stable work for these people.
Only a few men are employed at the chip mill site. They're involved mainly in unloading, plant operation and maintenance. This operation is highly mechanized. Logs are loaded by the lumberjacks into a debarking bin. From here, logs move to the chipper on a conveyor belt. Chips from the chipper are blown through elevated pipeways onto the top of a stockpile over 100 feet high on an exposed headland. From here, chips are taken to the wharf by conveyor belts for loading. Here, they're blown through derrick-mounted pipes into the hold of the ship. There is significant amount of spillage from the conveyors and blowers. This spillage sinks to the bay bottom and tannin is released into the seawater. Water also drains from the chip pile into the bay, resulting in visible discoloration of a large area around the outlet. Effects of this on fish life are localized to the bay. More important is the damage to fish breeding areas by siltation of coastal estuaries. Eden is an important fish-producing area, and the impact of soil erosion and siltation has been vast.
I think one of the interesting things to note here is that just a few short months ago, this was a very lovely, a very attractive, a very useful pool. A pool that was very rich in fish life, a completely natural pool. There was none of this filtration, you see. If you look at the top end of the pool, you'll see it's deep water, it's natural water, and this, in fact, was a beautiful fishing pool only a few short months ago. The clear cutting started on the catchment of the creek, which runs in over here on our left, Watergums Creek, about 18 months ago. The first heavy rains following the start of clear cutting was in June June this year, a mere 4 months ago. And because the hills had been bared of their trees and shrubs and so forth that bind the soil together, there was enormous erosion. An enormous amount of soils were washed off, and we'll go and have a look at that later, and you'll see where this stuff came from. But I think you can see the marked contrast between Watergums Creek, which comes in over there, and the Womboyne River, which comes in here. Upstream from here, we still have beautiful pools. They're still useful recreationally. They're still a wonderful part of Australia. From here on down, we have this sort of thing. And this is from, so far, a relatively small amount of clear cutting. Obviously, in just another year or two, all this is going to be gone. I think the contrast you can see there between the natural stream and the stream that has been clear cut speaks for itself. Yes, now.
First of all, I don't know if anyone's ever seen this little booklet. It's a nice, glossy little booklet put out by the Forestry Commission called Woodchip from Eden. They're putting forward their arguments why they're going to do clear cutting as used here in Eden. And this is what they say. The clear cutting resembles the natural system by which the silver-top ash forest and many other eucalypt forests in Australia regenerate following broad-acre destruction of the previous stand of fire. They're trying to argue that clear felling is the same as fire. In other words, that they're going to get the same sort of regeneration after a fire as what you get after clear felling. And they do say that any logging operation results in some disturbance of the soil. But conditions imposed by the Forestry Commission ensure that these operations are carried out in such disturbance as possible, less than would be expected to follow the forest destruction of the previous repeated forest fires. So they're trying to say that you get more erosion after the forest fires and after the clear cutting operations.
The other point that I'd like to observe about this is that this is an area of something like 4,500 hectares of continuous clear felling. Now that's one of the things that they promised they wouldn't do after the early operations, where they clear felled 4,500 hectares and another 4,500 hectare lot over in the Nadji State Forest, and then they came in and they did the same thing here. And we expected, as concerned people, that they wouldn't go with these very large area clear felling. The Australian Conservation Foundation has put a policy up that only 50 hectares in any one block should be clear felled, and these shouldn't be continuous. And when you construct roads on erodible soil like you've got here, or you construct mid-tracks of the density that you've got over on these sorts of slopes over there and out behind here, and virtually all around this area, you've got to take the consequences of having sediment loads in the stream that we first looked at. So I'll leave it to you to gauge whether it was sensible after the place had already been damaged by fire, whether it was sensible to go in with tracked vehicles and grossly disturb probably 40% of the topsoil. And a lot of that topsoil is now eroding.
You'll see in this shot here a logging dump. A log dump is where the logs are loaded onto the trucks ready for taking to the mill. Now, leading down from this log dump is a snig track, which leads straight down into a creek. Now, this is very bad forestry practices where you have a track going straight through a creek bed. This means that the silt and soil, which is eroded off the log dumps and off the snig track, is deposited straight into the creek, which then goes down the creek and eventually reaches Lake Wanbook.
This is an area where the Forestry Commission has punched a road right along the edge of a permanent watercourse. The debris, the logging debris, the dirt was all just thrown into the watercourse. When we complained about it, they then came along with a bulldozer and bulldozed all the material up in the bed of the watercourse and disturbed all the coast, all the side to the watercourse. And this catchment area is now eroding into the America River, which is a very important river in the catchment of the Nadji Nature Reserve.
During this intensive forestry operation, there has been built a lot of roads. The roads are of high quality for vehicle traffic with large cuttings and banked areas. And along the sides of these roads, because of the high runoff from the roads, you get these gutters formed, which you can see extending down along this road. Now, the soil is very shallow here, and just to demonstrate, we've got rock here. We've already hit the rock bottom.
Well, the Nadji ran brown for over a week as a result while I was constructing this bridge.
Yeah, but when did they put it in?
I put it in this year.
So this road itself is completely new, is it?
This is very new. This is the road that was built by the Forestry Commission, and they were under an obligation to consult with the National Parks and Wildlife Service on anything undertaken in this area. And they didn't even mention this road to the National Parks and Wildlife Service. This was just put in at the discretion of the local forester. And this illustrates to me why you can't leave areas to be lightly logged or anything else by the Forestry Commission. They must be within the nature reserve, otherwise it makes a farce out of having a nature reserve.
This area that we're standing in is the Nadji catchment. The catchment to the Nadji River, which is the most important river in the Nadji Nature Reserve, which in turn is one of the most important rivers on the east coast of Australia.
It was the only undisturbed, unpolluted river left. And now the Forestry Commission are going to log up here, which will affect all the rest of the Nadji River. Now, this area is a very, very small area compared to the whole Woodchip concession. If you take this area in the Nadji River and the area that we looked at in the America River, it is 1.8% of the total Woodchip concession. A miserable 1.8%, and we can't have it, even though we've been asking for it for 15 years. Certainly impresses me as an excellent example of wet sclerophyll forest. So that's briefly why, and I ask you to just spend a bit of time, perhaps by yourselves, just have a little bit of a look around this area and sit quietly for a while and contemplate what an undisturbed ecosystem is. Because you will find very, very few left on the face of this earth. And this happens to be, well, until this happens, this happens to be one of them.